Welcome to Shatter.
Support the channel by liking, commenting, and subscribing. I promise even more interesting stories. She looked me in the eye and said it like a declaration. I'm free to do whatever I want. There was no anger in her voice. No edge. Just calm detachment, like she was stating a fact about the weather. Like I was supposed to nod and agree with the idea that my role in her life had been reduced to background noise. And in that moment, something in me shifted. It wasn't rage. It wasn't heartbreak. It was clarity. We'd been together 5 years. Built a life with routines that felt solid. Predictable. Friday takeout. Sunday hikes. Holiday photos sent to both families. She used to say I made her feel grounded. But something changed in her after that last promotion. New circles. New voice. New version of herself that walked into rooms like she didn't owe anyone explanations, least of all me. She started using phrases like my time, my body, my growth. I supported it. Always had. But one morning, she left her journal open on the table. And on the page, one sentence burned into me. He's part of my past comfort, not my future design. I didn't confront her. I didn't ask for context. I just went quiet. Because in that line, she gave me the one thing I needed more than answers, a decision. She thought freedom was a performance. Something to showcase to her new crowd, late-night drinks, solo trips, conversations dripping with self-importance. She told her friends I was safe, but not exciting. Steady, but too available. So I gave her exactly what she asked for. Space. But not the kind that waits. The kind that exits. Over the next 2 weeks, I said less and less. Let her fill the air with assumptions. Let her believe she still held the power to return and reset. That I was frozen, loyal by default. What she didn't know was that I was already erasing myself from the architecture. Every shared password changed. Every bill rerouted. Every photo removed. The woman who swore she'd live on her own terms didn't realize I'd stopped being part of the sentence altogether. And when the moment came, when she finally noticed the shift, it wasn't because I slammed a door. It was because the door was open, and I was no longer standing behind it. The first real crack came from someone I barely knew. Tyler, a friend of a friend. We'd met maybe twice. Not close. But he followed both of us on social media, and apparently he had no filter. We bumped into each other at a local bar. I was grabbing a drink after work, alone, by design. He walked up, gave me that awkward half-smile people wear when they're about to say something they shouldn't. I didn't know you guys were open like that, he said. I didn't respond. Just raised an eyebrow. He took that as permission. Saw Emily at Cora's birthday last weekend. She was close with that guy. Lucas, I think. Didn't look like a just friends situation. Then he paused, as if trying to assess whether I already knew. I didn't flinch. Didn't ask for more. Just nodded once and walked away. That was all I needed. The worst part wasn't the implication. It was how unsurprised I felt. There's a kind of silence that creeps in before the storm. Not dramatic. Not explosive. Just numb. I walked home that night without music. No phone in my hand. Just the sound of my own footsteps on wet pavement. When I got home, she was already there. Sitting on the couch, legs tucked under her, scrolling through her phone like she wasn't dismantling the version of us that used to exist. She looked up, smiled, asked how my day was. I told her it was fine. She never noticed the shift. That was her blind spot, assuming stillness meant submission. That silence meant peace. But inside, I was already withdrawing, quietly pulling the wires out of everything we built, emotionally packing the bags before the lights even changed. Over the next few days, I studied her. Not with suspicion. With detachment, watching how her smile lingered too long when she read certain messages, how she kept her phone face down, even in rooms we used to treat as safe. She had already left. She just hadn't walked out yet. I didn't accuse. Didn't question. Instead, I went back to Tyler's comment. I checked Cora's photos. Scrolled carefully. Found one, blurry, in the background. But there it was. Her. Lucas. Too close. I screenshotted it. Not for proof. For closure. Because that night, I made my decision. Not to fight. To vanish with strategy. Not out of weakness. But because I was done participating in a story where my presence had become optional. I never asked her about Lucas. I didn't need to. Because asking would have meant I still expected an honest answer. And I didn't. By then, my focus had shifted from feeling to form. I wasn't navigating heartbreak. I was designing an exit. She left her laptop open one morning while she showered. Normally, I wouldn't have touched it. But the screen caught my eye, a message notification from a name I recognized but had never seen that high on her feed. Lucas. Just a preview. Last night was. I didn't click. I didn't need the rest. Instead, I walked into the kitchen, poured coffee, and stood there, watching her through the reflection of the microwave door as she moved through the hallway, humming some new song she claimed I wouldn't get. She thought she was living out some modern narrative of liberation. But freedom built on secrecy isn't freedom, it's performance. And I was no longer part of the audience. Later that day, I went methodical. Checked our joint account. She hadn't contributed to rent in 2 months. Her card history showed late-night ride shares to unfamiliar addresses, new restaurants we never visited together, and boutique charges I hadn't seen before. It painted a picture she would never admit to, but couldn't erase. I created a separate account. Moved half of what was mine, no more, no less. Changed passwords on every shared subscription. Deactivated the couple's calendar. Logged out of the shared grocery list. Bit by bit, I unraveled the invisible threads. And she never noticed. Because when people get used to you holding everything together, they never imagine you're the one silently pulling it apart. She started spending more nights with friends. More meetings ran late. And still, she acted like nothing had changed, like I was frozen in the position of standby support. Quiet. Available. But I wasn't available anymore. I was watching. Not her, the pattern. The difference between a mistake and a strategy is repetition. And what I saw wasn't confusion. It was choreography. Every missed call. Every vague answer. Every night she turned her phone over and said, "Just tired." That wasn't fatigue. That was redirection. So I stopped reacting. Stopped participating. I let her write the script, while I quietly stepped off the stage. And when the moment came, she wouldn't hear the door slam. She'd only feel the wind as it closed behind me. The day I vanished wasn't dramatic. There was no note. No confrontation. No shattered plates or slammed doors. Just silence. Strategic, deliberate, final. She had gone on another weekend with the girls. I knew better. I didn't follow her. Didn't need to. Instead, I used those 2 days to restructure my entire life. I moved everything essential to a new location, 1-bedroom loft across town. Short lease. Clean slate. No shared furniture. No scent of her perfume trapped in the sheets. I packed quietly, like a man leaving a hotel room after overstaying his welcome. I took only what I needed. Left behind what once felt shared, now felt staged, framed photos, her favorite blanket, mug she bought for both of us. They stayed, like props in a scene I'd already exited. By the time she returned Sunday evening, I was already gone. She texted around 6 p.m., said she'd pick up dinner. Didn't ask where I was. Assumed, as always, that I'd be waiting. I turned off read receipts. Changed the lock. Canceled her phone line on the shared plan. Removed her name from the lease. I didn't block her. That would imply anger. This wasn't rage. This was erasure. She arrived around 7. I watched from across the street. Her car pulled into the driveway. She walked to the door, keys in hand, expecting routine. But routine was gone. She paused. Tried the key again. Confused. Looked at her phone. Sent a message. Then another. Waited. Checked the window. Nothing. That's when it started sinking in. She called. It rang. I let it. She texted again. Is something wrong? I didn't answer. Because everything that had gone wrong wasn't sudden. It was cumulative. 1,000 small cuts she never acknowledged until the bleeding became visible. I didn't ghost her. I just returned to my own life. The next day, she reached out to friends. To my brother. To people we both knew. But I had warned them in advance. Told them not to respond. Not to mediate. This wasn't temporary. This was surgical. By midweek, her tone had changed. Less confusion. More panic. Messages started stacking up. Long paragraphs. Empty apologies. Explanations no one asked for. She said she felt like I was overreacting. She said she didn't think I'd take it this far. But that was the point. She never thought I would choose myself until I did. And when I did, I didn't announce it. I just made sure there was no door left open behind me. He thought he won. Lucas, the man she traded loyalty for attention. The one who slipped in during the unraveling. I never confronted him. Never said a word. But I watched him carefully, and quietly, I started noticing patterns. Not hers. His. He wasn't just sloppy. He was careless in ways that came from a life built on getting away with things. Company laptop used for personal messages. Side projects registered under aliases. Venmo payments that didn't match client records. I had no intention of destroying him out of jealousy. This wasn't about revenge. It was about exposure. Because people like him, they thrive in the dark. But I knew where the light switches were. One email. No threats. No emotion. Just documentation, attachments with metadata, screenshots, inconsistencies. Sent anonymously. To the right inbox. His employer launched an audit 3 days later. Internal investigation. Quiet. Controlled. Corporate enough to not make headlines, but loud enough to shift the ground beneath his feet. I never followed up. Never checked in. Just listened to the silence that followed. And sure enough, it reached her. A mutual friend mentioned it in passing. Lucas stepped away from work. Something came up. He was off the grid. She didn't connect it to me. She couldn't. Because by then, I had already vanished from the narrative. But the damage landed exactly where it needed to. He started pulling away. Not dramatically, just less present. Less available. Suddenly cautious. Suddenly paranoid. The man who once bragged about being untouchable was now watching his steps. And she felt it. Not in confrontation. In absence. The text slowed. The invites dried up. He stopped showing her off. And the woman who thought she was stepping into freedom began to feel something else. Abandonment. From both sides. What she didn't understand was that I never needed to raise my voice. I never needed to threaten. I just needed her to see the difference between me and him, not in what we said, but in what remained after we left. He faded. I sharpened. And as she stood there, between the echo of what she lost and the collapse of what she thought she gained, she finally started to realize. Not every man leaves the same way. Some leave you with scars. Others leave you with silence that never stops speaking. The world didn't turn on her all at once. It cracked slowly, like hairline fractures no one notices until the surface gives way. I never said a word to anyone. But the truth has a way of leaking when the performance gets sloppy. It started with her closest circle. The ones she called her people. The same ones she posted weekend brunches with, shared stories about empowerment and independence. But now, the smiles in the photos were tighter. The captions thinner. Engagement dropping. I didn't need to do anything. She did it herself. She showed up to one of our mutual friends' gatherings, alone. That was the first ripple. Everyone expected me. But I'd already stepped out of that frame. She walked in wearing that curated confidence. But people sensed it. Something in her posture. In the way she over-explained why I couldn't make it. No one asked. Later, I heard someone muttered under their breath, "Didn't he leave?" She laughed it off. Too loud. Another fracture. Her sister stopped replying as quickly. Her mother, once loud in defending her, went quiet. I never said a word to them. But silence, when strategic, is louder than explanation. Then came the colleague, a woman from her office. We had only met once. A networking event, forgettable. But she saw Emily with Lucas once. And then she saw her without him. She asked around. Someone told her I was no longer in the picture. She put the dots together. And in the next lunchroom whisper, the version of Emily that was ambitious and in control became the one who lost something solid. Not scandal. Just suspicion. That's all it took. She started noticing the shift. The tone in emails. The clipped responses. The team meeting where her idea was glossed over. Not rejected. Just ignored. She didn't crumble. She compensated. More posts. More smiles. More empty affirmations. But affirmation without credibility is just noise. And when she posted a throwback of us, clearly recycled, the silence underneath it spoke louder than the caption. One comment. From someone we both knew. Thought you said you were better without him. She deleted it. But the screen doesn't forget. And neither did the people watching. Meanwhile, I stayed out of sight. I didn't interfere. Didn't clap back. Didn't hint. I just existed differently. Sharper. Quieter. Unreachable. And in that distance, her performance unraveled. Because reputation isn't built by defense. It's shattered by silence. Loneliness doesn't always arrive as silence. Sometimes, it arrives as noise you can't respond to. Voices that used to greet you with warmth, now turning cold. Rooms that used to center around you, now treating you like background. That's what happened to her. At first, she thought it was just temporary. A phase. That people needed time. That I would return once I calmed down. But time passed. I didn't return. And neither did they. Her texts started showing up in old group chats, unanswered. Her name floated in circles she used to lead, now spoken with hesitation. The loyalty she once commanded turned neutral. Passive. Then absent. She tried to reconnect. Tried calling my brother. He didn't pick up. She messaged one of my best friends. Just wanted to check in. No pressure. He left it on read. Polite, but final. Even her own family began retreating. Not because I poisoned them. I didn't speak a word. But they saw her clearly now, outside of the narrative she once controlled. Her mother tried, once, to soften the blow. Suggested she write a letter. Not to me. To herself. She didn't. Instead, she doubled down on appearances. Her feed filled with solo shots. Healing. Self-love. Power moves. But power that needs an audience isn't power. And the audience was gone. She saw me once, by accident. Downtown cafe. I was sitting outside, reading. New posture. New calm. I didn't see her first. A friend did. They told me later. She froze. Didn't walk over. Just stood there. That told me everything. She was no longer the storm. She was the debris. Not dangerous. Just displaced. She was living in the shell of decisions she thought were liberating. But freedom without clarity becomes exile. And I, the man she once thought would wait, would bend, would always be there, was now a shadow in her life. Visible. Untouchable. I didn't hide from her. I just existed too far outside her new reality for her to access. She sent one final message that week. A single line. I don't know how it got this far. I didn't reply. Because it didn't get far. It just got honest. What she called distance, I called recovery. What she called confusion, I called design. And what she called silence, I called survival. Eventually, she asked to meet. Not through drama. No threats. Just a quiet message that landed late at night. If there's still space for a conversation. I like that. I didn't reply immediately. I waited 2 days. Not to manipulate. To observe. If it was impulse, it would pass. It didn't. So I agreed. Public place. Bright cafe. No nostalgia. No setting for sentiment. She arrived before me. Sat by the window, hands clenched under the table, pretending to look casual. But I knew that posture. I'd seen it in others. That's the stance of someone walking into judgment, not reconciliation. I sat down across from her. She looked smaller. Not physically. Energetically. The woman who once filled every room now seemed to be hoping I wouldn't walk away mid-sentence. She started talking. Fast. About everything but the core. Surface movements. Work stress. Isolation. It's been a weird year. She avoided names, avoided blame. Then her voice cracked. She asked why I didn't say something earlier. Why I didn't fight for her. Why I left so clean. I let the silence sit between us. Because silence was the answer. She wanted drama. Fire. Something she could argue against. But I gave her stillness. Precision. A line she couldn't cross because it didn't invite her forward. When I finally spoke, I said only this. You left long before I did. She flinched. Tried to explain. Said she was lost, not disloyal. Said she didn't realize how far she drifted. But realization after impact doesn't rebuild what was already hollow. I told her I wasn't angry. And that was the worst part for her. Because anger means you still care. But I didn't. Not like that. She asked if we could start again, not rewind, but reset. A new version. Cleaner. Honest. I told her she was free. Always had been. But freedom doesn't come with returns. We parted with no handshake. No hug. Just distance. And even that felt generous. She texted me that night. Said it felt like she was talking to a ghost. She was. Not because I disappeared, but because the man she betrayed no longer lived in this world. The one she met today was forged in silence. Built from the pieces she broke. Unreachable. And done explaining why. Collapse doesn't always come in fire. Sometimes it's water. Slow, creeping, seeping into the foundation until everything you built gives way beneath your feet. Her life began folding inward. One corner at a time. She lost her footing at work first. A project she used to lead was reassigned. Not officially. Just gradually. Fewer emails. Less input. A polite freeze-out. They didn't demote her. They just stopped relying on her. She tried compensating. Longer hours. Sharper clothes. Louder smiles. But people saw through it. The same colleagues she once bragged to about living on her terms were now whispering about missed chances, burned bridges. Then came the friends. Not enemies. Just indifferent. She started texting more, getting less back. Plans dissolved. Calls redirected. And when she showed up uninvited to a friend's event, someone quietly asked, didn't she say she was better off alone? She stayed for 20 minutes. left without saying goodbye. Family came next. Her sister called less. Her father, who once defended every one of her choices, told her flatly, "You burned too many good things trying to feel powerful." That one stayed with her. But the real fracture came the night she scrolled past a post of mine. Not flashy. Just a photo, me at an event, standing beside someone she didn't recognize. I wasn't smiling. I didn't need to. The caption read, "Growth rarely announces itself." She stared at it for hours. Sent me a message she never should have written. Long raw. No punctuation. Said she missed what we had. Said she didn't realize I'd actually move on. Said she hoped someday we could talk again. Maybe rebuild. I never opened it. I never had to. Because by then, she wasn't talking to me. She was talking to the ghost of the man she used to control. And that ghost had already found peace in silence, while she chased noise in empty rooms. The last time I saw her, she didn't see me. I was walking out of a building. She was sitting alone in her car, engine running, staring out the windshield like the world had slowed down just enough for regret to catch up. She looked older. Not in years, in weight. The kind that comes from truths finally settling where denial used to live. And in that moment, I realized something. She wasn't looking for me anymore. She was looking for the version of herself that existed before she broke everything. But that version was gone too. Closure isn't a conversation. It's a decision. And mine came on an ordinary Tuesday. No milestone. No anniversary. Just a morning where I woke up, looked at the ceiling, and realized there was nothing left of her in my life. Not in the bed. Not in the room. Not in my head. And most importantly, not in my future. I didn't feel relief. I didn't feel pain. I felt nothing. That's how I knew it was over. Not because she apologized. Not because justice was served. But because I no longer needed either. I lived differently now. My routines were mine. My spaces were clean. The chaos she once brought, the constant need for translation, tension, tests, it was gone. And I didn't miss it. She still existed somewhere. Posting quotes about self-growth. Rebuilding, maybe. Or pretending to. But her chapter in my story had no remaining pages. One evening, I passed by a restaurant we once visited. I paused for a moment. Not out of nostalgia, just recognition. Like glancing at an address from an old job. Nothing pulled me inside. I kept walking. The message she'd sent weeks ago remained unread. I didn't delete it. I didn't open it. It just sat there, preserved like an exhibit of what could have been saved if the fire hadn't been started by the one who screamed for water. I never blocked her. She was free to reach out. But I had simply stopped being a destination. And when people finally asked, months later, "Whatever happened with you two?" I said nothing. Not out of secrecy, but because the story no longer belonged in conversation. It was buried in decisions. I saw her one last time, from a distance. She was standing alone, outside a bookstore. Rain starting to fall. No umbrella. Just stillness. She looked around like she was waiting for someone. But no one came. Not because they didn't care. Because they no longer existed in her script. And that's when it hit me. She wasn't suffering from loss. She was suffering from clarity. She finally understood the cost of playing with stability like it was disposable. And I finally understood the power of disappearing. Not to hurt, not to punish, but to protect what's left of you. The last words she ever wrote to me were simple. "You didn't even say goodbye." And in my head, I whispered, I didn't disappear. I just stopped showing up where I wasn't respected. Then I closed the thread. And with it, the door. For good. Real men don't explode. They exit. Subscribe for more power stories.